Hey, I'm Joe. Again, going to be working on my 1979 Honda CBX today. I've got the bike to a good spot where I'm ready to start working on the wiring. So in the last video, I got the carbs mounted up, made sure throttle and everything worked properly, which is awesome. And now I need to switch over to the electronics. So I'm starting with the gauges. So I bought a set of Daytona gauges that I'm going to mount to the top of my fork bridge, the clamp that holds the forks on the left and right side. So there is no place to mount these on the bridge because this is something that I got custom from Cognito Moto. So I am going to drill 2 holes and then I'm going to mount the gauges with a mount that I 3D printed. So I'll also walk you through what I did during the 3D design process and then how I actually printed that. I'm probably going to switch the clip-ons as well. They're a little low for my taste, a little low for this bike. So I've read that you can actually swap the left to the right and reverse it, and it should give you an extra 1.5 to 2 inches raise in the handlebars, which should help. And we'll see if that's in a good spot. Enjoy. So I have the CBX up on a scissor jack. And I just have a piece of wood there, and then I have 2 jack stands at the back just to help ensure that the bike doesn't move while I'm working on it. So I removed this top nut, which I have a set of impact sockets, so I just used a 1 7/16 to get this off. And then I loosened both of these bolts here, and that should allow me to lift up and away, and because the bike is supported, it shouldn't fall over, scoot down the forks, and also the forks are still tightened by this bottom clamp here. So let's see how easy this is to get off. Well, it does look like it's coming off pretty easily. There we go. So where I'm going to drill 2 holes is right here. So I'm going to use an M5, and then I'm just going to ensure that I drill straight through, and then I will tap, and that will give me a place to mount the brackets. And then this is the bracket that I need to mount. This I had 3D printed because I didn't want these moving around. So I used PET G when I printed this out. So I'm going to line it up with where this needs to be, and the holes should be right in the middle of this piece of metal, right? We don't want to be too close to either one of the edges. And I'm probably just going to eyeball this because I can use this piece as a guide. So I just need to make sure this is all where I want it. And then I can see the 2 marks that I made. Those look like they're in a good spot. Let's just double check. Yeah, we are good. So I'm just gonna drill little pilot holes right where those are. All right, so we should be good to drill. All right, so it's getting a little hard to drill, probably because the metal has nowhere to go. Now I have the M6 10 tap. I'm going to try and go in as straight as I can as we create these threads. Pull this out so I can clean up this hole a bit. So it does look like Honda uses these M6s a lot. their bikes, because I do have a bunch. May be able to use these. But first we need to drill these holes a little bit bigger. I made a quick hole in this bracket. I may reprint. We'll have to see. And then I need to make another hole on this side. Now let's see how these line up. Not bad. Let's try a test fit. So I'll just spin this bolt all the way through. Okay. Does look like I got both of those in. The bracket feels pretty solid. So I can see if I have some shorter bolts. All right, so I have 2 more Honda bolts that are a little shorter. Yeah, that is pretty close. Could use a washer or 2. Let me see if there's anything else. I decided to try to put a couple washers on here. So I got 3 washers. I do a 4th washer. So 4 looks right. Oh, so we look good. Both sides. So that bracket's in good shape. So what I'll do is I'll tighten down these bolts and we'll see what type of rigidity we have. All right, so after tightening everything down, we can see that the bracket is tight. I'm not getting any flex in that, so this is definitely thick enough. Right, the 4 washers worked, but there's still a little bit of flex up here because I didn't make this part of the bracket very thick. Right, that's the issue when I'm working with this printed material. So, and it's also not aligned perfectly as well. It does look like it's tilted just a little bit, because when I was trying to get these holes aligned, I guessed where they were supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reprint this bracket. I'll put the holes in the correct spot, and then I'll make this a little bit thicker, and then I will remount everything, and I think I'll be in a good spot. I may actually make this a little thicker as well, and that will prevent me from having to use so many washers here. But yeah, this extra rigidity I think is going to work really well. All right, so I'm out of the garage and into my office because we need to 3D print a new bracket here. So what I want to do is I want to make this piece thicker. So I'm going to extend this out so I can do it about this size of 4 washers. And then I need to increase the rigidity of this piece because this is flexing and I don't want it to do that. So I'll add a couple millimeters to this piece. That should remove the flexing. And then the last thing that I wanted to do was rearrange these holes because you can see it's a little uneven. And I did that because when I drilled the holes into the top fork bridge, they weren't perfect, but I would like this to sit flush. So I'll do some measurements. I'll move these holes to where they're supposed to be, and then we won't have these extra holes printed right here. So I'll show you what I'm going to do on Fusion 360. So here is the design that I put together. So you can see this is like version 9 because I went through a bunch of little iterations because I didn't want to waste filament. So let's first increase the width of this piece here. What I want to do is just extrude this bottom piece, and that will make it rigid enough. So if I look at this, and I could have just measured this here as well. So if I measure this, I get on here, so I'm getting 5 millimeters. So let's do this again. So let's measure between here and here, and that should give us, yep, there's that 5 millimeters. So when I look at, this is actually a good depth. I don't think I need it that deep though. So let's do from here to here. Let's click inspect, as you can tell. Still trying to learn my way around here. So this is a little over 11 millimeters, and I don't need it to be that thick. So we need something between 5 and 11. All right, so to start, let's extrude this surface here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on the surface first, then I'm going to click extrude. So let's say I want to give it another 1, 2, 3. Let's say another 4 millimeters. I'll click OK. And that should give us some better rigidity. So let's try measuring from here to here. So now this is 9 millimeters. And then let's measure from here to here. And that's just 2 millimeters. So that gives us 7 millimeters. That should be more than enough. Okay, so the next part is let's get these holes measured and moved. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to find where these holes were. Let's figure out when I made these. So it looks like here. So let's go in and edit this sketch. And let's drag this point down to where we think it makes sense. And actually before that, let's back this up and let's increase the size of each of these. So we went with an M6 instead of an M4. So we will increase this to 6.3. There's 6.3. Let's do the same thing over here. 6.3. And then I will move this construction line down to here. So yeah, we do need to make sure that this is not going to interfere. Let's try right there. So I'll hit finish sketch. All right, so here you can see that's too low. So we need to move it up a bit. So let's go back to this. Let's move this up to here. Ensuring that it stays in the middle. We'll hit finish sketch. I think I want to move it just a little bit more. Click finish and let's see how this looks. All right, so that looks good. Next, we need to drop one of these holes down to take into consideration where that hole actually was drilled. So the best way to do this is to actually measure. And to make this a little easier, I'm just going to use calipers. So let's do this. So this looks like it's in inches. All right, millimeters. Let's zero this out. So it looks like 8.6. Versus 7.3. So it looks like it's off by 1.3 millimeters. So let's make that change. So we'll come back in here. We'll delete this. And then this one we will move. .3. And we'll click finish. So going back to our design, let's just extrude this bottom piece here. And we'll just do 5 millimeters. And then just to make this printing easier, we can actually fill in this space as well. So let's do this. Let's just create a sketch. And we'll do it on this plane. And then let's just connect these lines. Here, here, here. And we'll go back, we'll extrude this. Let's see where we are. And then we should be able to extrude this. It should be 50 millimeters. Let's see if that looks right. That does look correct. That looks good. So we'll save this and then we'll open it in our slicer, our Prusa slicer for our 3D printer. So name this Final Modifications, and then let's export this. I think we're on version 10. I'll export that to the desktop. So we'll bring in the Prusa slicer, and then let's import what we just exported. So it does look like that piece that we added, it's considering it a separate piece. Let's see. This to join. All right, that looks better. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so it's already got my settings in here. So I use the standard settings for the PETG. So actually, I use the Overture PETG, and then I modified it a bit. So I have the MMU3, which is the multi-material. And then I came in here and I turned off the wipe tower, and then I set structural to the speed that I'm using as opposed to the fast mode. And that's supposed to work a little bit better. And then I also changed the fill pattern from grid to gyroid. That's supposed to work better. So let's slice it and see. So we've got supports, and then I have the infill set to 20% as opposed to 15, just to give it a little more rigidity. This looks good. So I will send this over to my printer. I'll add it to the print queue, and then I'll hit confirm. So it looks like it's going to take about 2 hours to print. Now that the print is ready, I'll actually get it started on the printer. So I have the Prusa Mark IV, and then I'll come in and I'll click the gauge mount. Make sure it's got the correct filament, which is number 1. and then it's starting. So in about 2 hours, you should be done. It's been printing for 8 minutes. Only 3% there, but you can see it's laying down the first layers for this print. The bracket is about 40% done. So it definitely looks like it's a lot more rigid, so that's good. So the bracket finally finished. So I'll remove this, and then I need to remove the supports, and then we can give it a shot. All right, so here is the finished product. So everything looks pretty aligned. I think all the measurements are correct. Right, so we've got no flex here. We didn't need to use any washers on these bolts. This is definitely more rigid. I was able to reuse the same bolts that I had on there initially. So I think we're in good shape. So here's the completed setup. So I really like how the gauges are sitting up against the fork bridge clamp. What I also did was I swapped both of the handlebars and then reversed them. So now the handlebars sit up a little bit higher, right? Since these are from a Suzuki Gixxer, right? Typically the handlebars are down like this because you're in a sport bike position, but I wanted this up a little bit higher. So I did swap them, and I do like the way that they sit now, which is great. And then I also had to adjust the brake master cylinder. So I had a bracket from the other brake that I took off this bike that came with it. That was an aftermarket part, but luckily these pieces match. So I just cut and then bent this to a place where now I can mount this to this front bolt here. Before it actually screwed into the top of the clip-on handlebar, but since they're reversed, it's actually on the underside. The other thing that this fixed was these little tabs were sitting up against the bottom of this fork bridge clamp, but now that they're reversed, I was able to shift them all the way up, so that got me another probably ½ an inch as well. So the essentially cockpit is done, so this looks good. Next step is I'm gonna have to start wiring everything up. I don't have any wiring in here except for these, but I have to wire both the clip-ons, all the gauges, and ensure everything's working properly. Thanks for watching. If you want to get notified when I release new videos, feel free to subscribe, and you'll see the rest of the progress on my CBX project. Take care.